All right, how we doing? Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys all being here. I know, afternoon slump, busy morning. Today's topic is incredibly important. I think one of the most overlooked aspects of the conservation game. So I hope we can get some good information out there and start something new here in this room. Before we get started, we're going to do a quick room poll. Please raise your hand if you are an active hunter. Just hunters for now. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you are an active voter. Interesting. All right. So, to my left, I have Mr. Mark Oz Geist. You guys may know him by a more common title, the Hero of Benghazi. Mark is also the founder of the nonprofit Shadow Warriors. To my right, I have Keith Mark, founder and CEO of Hunter Nation, also a television personality. If you guys have been watching, hunting content online or on the TV, you definitely know Keith. So, first question we're going to start with, and we'll start with Keith. I think a lot of people view hunting as kind of a cruel, outdated pastime. And they think it's, part of a bygone area. We don't need to do that anymore. But as a former member of the International Wildlife Conservation Council under DOI, you know that agencies actually put a lot of time and effort into monitoring herd health, carrying capacity, and other factors. So could you talk a little bit about how agencies monitor these animals and then sell hunting tags based on that information?
Appreciate it. First of all, I want to say what a kind of an honor and a pleasure it is to come out here with ACC and look at such a group of passionate next generation conservationists. That's really cool. And so, in looking forward with your group to answer that question, I actually want to look backwards. We're celebrating America's 250th anniversary, and when you think back to when the Revolutionary War started, we didn't have an army that could compete with what was at that time the greatest military power in the history of the world. Most trained, most equipped. What we had here in the colonies was a bunch of rugged, individual, self-sufficient, self-reliant, tough as hell hunters. And so what happened during the Revolutionary War is that these hunters took all the skills that they learned, marksmanship and woodsmanship, and put it into a military effort, which ultimately helped George Washington and his army be successful. Hunters have played that key role all the way back then. And I'm sure when you hear my friend Mark talk about that 13 hours that he was involved in Benghazi that night, 9/11 some years back, that he was a former Marine and working for the agency at the time, learned his hunting skills, his shooting skills in the hunting woods. So hunting is not a cruel sport, it's hands-on conservation. And so what we do as hunters, we live a hunting lifestyle. And for all the thousands of hours that we'll spend in the wilderness, in a tree stand, in a duck blind, in a field or a marsh, the act of harvest or the kill is a very short period of that time. God created this renewable resource. And when you think through it logically, we have rebirth in the spring. We have growth all through the summer. And then as we approach winter, or the dead time when everything dies, leaves fall, snow comes, there's a surplus of animals. Man harvests that surplus of animals to keep a natural balance between habitat and carrying capacity. And to be able to play a hands-on part in that as a hunter, it's not cruel at all. To me, what is cruel is if you would just leave. Once we landed on this shore and built the first golf course and condominiums and all that stuff, we became responsible for everything, and that includes the wildlife. And so if we don't manage that wildlife with sound science, that to me is cruel. So I don't think hunting's cruel at all. It's the greatest way that we can hands-on participate in conservation.
Thanks, Keith. Mark, as an avid hunter, you know that the general public has a pretty big misconception and bias against things like trophy hunting, for example. But the US has a lot of laws against, for example, wasting edible parts of an animal. Can you talk about how these laws are structured and what the intent of them is?
I think I want to start with try to keep it short, a little story about hunting. Um, and, you know, as Keith had said, the actual harvesting of the animal is something that is very brief in the whole concept. A elk hunt that I went on a few years back started out about 10 miles from where we ended, and it started with tracking the animal. Ended up with crawling on my belly for about 150 yards. And as you do that, you're experiencing everything else about conservation. You're going through, I'm watching how animals react to me and to the environment as I'm going through it, and as the elk is. And as I get closer and want to take that shot, it's not about the shot, it's about the hunt. The kill or the harvest is the thing that I do so I can help feed my family. Because that's something that I've always done. It's my great grandfather settled here in Colorado in 1910. I grew up most of my family living within 20 miles of each other, and we farmed, hunted, fished. That's how we fed our families. We raised cattle, chickens, everything that we could. But it was everything that was allowed us to be able to survive and live. And through all of that is that experience of being in the environment. I think that is far more important than in even the harvest. A friend of mine, he says he doesn't he doesn't hunt to kill. He kills so he can hunt, because he loves that. It's the hunt that is the part of it that is so important, not the kill, not the harvest. And as to the question, when I took my son out the very first time, and he was able to experience that tracking and that following the animal and learning how to look for different sign, and he killed what we call a spiked buck, which is just one horn on each side. And that was a trophy to him. That was the proudest moment that he had. And it's not about how big the animal is. But when it does come to those, it is a part of it for some people and some people not. But when you're harvesting that older animal, a lot of that is you're clearing out time and space for other animals to come up, part of that conservation, part of the new genetics being put into the herds. And all of those things have to happen. And it'll happen one way or the other, whether it's through them fighting, as we saw across at the museum. You see two elk, their antlers are tied together from a fight, and they end up dying. It is part of what happens in the circle of life, and we are a part of that as well. And I think that's why it's so important that one is we do things ethically. We are responsible for our actions, as well as everything else that when we interact with the animals, whether it be hunting or just watching them. I think that's really how important it is.
And social media has been kind of a blessing and a curse when it comes to the concept of trophy hunting as well. You'll have some people on social media and television personalities that only want to air their big animals, something that they killed with a lot of horns, a bigger alligator, whatever it might be. And then you have other people that'll just post honestly. And they'll fight amongst themselves. I always say that I have 4 trophy rooms at my house. One is a chest freezer, and 3 of them are uprights, because the greatest trophy is what I feed my family with. And I'm doing a new television show right now. I'm hosting a show called Great American Tales. And there's an underlying theme in Great American Tales where I'm weaving through the stories is the hunting connection between some of these famous Americans, including George Washington. And in the George Washington episode, I say we don't have to guess about George Washington as a hunter because he kept copious journals. He wrote it. And he didn't write his hunting adventures and stories for historians. He didn't write it to be politically correct. He wrote it as a hunter because he considered himself that. When George Washington had success in the field, he said he killed 4 fox or a fox or 2 deer or 2 turkey or whatever it might be. He killed them. He didn't write he harvested them. And so the point is that the trophy is in the eye of the beholder. I've been married 41 years. She's a hell of a trophy to me now. Might be a guy in my neighborhood, might not think so. But I think, and much we were talking with Taylor beforehand about some rifts among the conservation communities, whether preservation or conservation, hands-on versus, hey, we can only sit in here and look at this, but you can't ride a horse out there. You know, we're always going to have that infighting. We have to curb it. Hunters are no different.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. A practical matter that I think is worth discussing is that hunters are the largest source of revenue for every single state DNR in the country. I don't think people know how a lot of state programs are funded, but it's almost exclusively through Pittman-Robertson taxes and license sales. So, Keith, I was wondering if you could spend just a quick minute talking about how Pittman-Robertson taxes work, what they're placed on, and how the combination of those with license sales helps basically run all of conservation.
So Teddy Roosevelt himself said hunters were the first and best conservationists. And he recognized that because, again, of the hands-on concept. The Pittman-Robertson Act is every gun, every bullet, every bow, every arrow, all the hunting supplies that you see, whether you're at Bass Pro or Walmart or in any mom and pop store in any town or city in the country. There's an excise tax on those goods that goes into a federal fund, and that in turn is dealt out to state agencies. I myself am also a commissioner on the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. And so money comes in to fund all these agencies so we can take care of the fine people that are out here in the field, counting, managing, fixing, and all the things that you see out here that needs to get done on the hands-on basis from these agencies federally and on a statewide basis. Without hunter dollars, none of this would be possible. And the other thing I would add is outside money. Hunters have a stake in this game because if you live a hunting lifestyle, and I went probably 15 or 16 years in my house and never bought 1 pound of meat from the store. We either raised it, killed it, or didn't eat it. And so for me, if there was no game in the forest, there was no moose for me to hunt, no elk, no bears, no deer. I mean, that's going to put a big dent into the hunting lifestyle. So it behooves hunters to make sure that we manage wildlife populations for sustainability. And that's what the Pittman-Robertson money does. And that's why we have a lot of the great things you see behind you right here.
Excellent. And Mark, you know, most people don't actually fill a tag every year. In fact, roughly 10% of elk tags every year actually get filled. Knowing this, sportsmen continue to buy those tags, even though they know statistically, you know, 9 out of 10 guys aren't going to get that elk. Why do sportsmen continue to spend quite a bit of money to buy a tag that they aren't going to fill? And what does that do for conservation programs?
Well, I think that goes right back to what I was saying earlier, is it's about the hunt. You know, part of the hunt is me and the friends that I hunt with, getting ready beforehand, making sure everything's packed up, getting out, putting up the tent, staying out in the wild. And we stay there for 8 to 10 days. It's time for us to, you know, and a lot of times my hunting friends are veterans, most of them. It's a way for us to bond again in another way and talk about things that, you know, a lot of times what we've seen and what we've done for this country, and it gives us that environment. But it's an environment without conservation, without the wild, we wouldn't have. And if anybody who's never been camping, you need to take that up and see what it's like to sit there without your phone, without connection to the outside world, and sit there and enjoy what God has put on this earth for us. I mean, sitting up and looking at the stars in a pitch black environment. I've been blessed. I got to do this around the world. And just because of my time in the military and things like that. And no matter where I went, it was the same. Is you're getting to see something and be involved both emotionally and physically into an environment that most people in this world will never experience because they don't take that time to go do that.
Yeah, and I might just add one personal story. I was fortunate enough to do a TV show with WWE wrestler Shawn Michaels for about 7 years. And I don't know how many of you ever watched WWE wrestling. But Sean was one of the most popular guys out there. Sean had a terrible addiction to drugs and alcohol. He had 2 small children. Him and Rebecca had been married for quite a while. And he was struggling. And he went to church, and his pastor, Sean was not a hunter. He didn't grow up in a hunting family. And his pastor said, Sean, I want to take you out. I want to take you hunting. Sean goes, but I'm not a hunter. He goes, but you could be. So he took him out and he put him in a Texas box blind. Sean lived at that time in San Antonio. And got him out there and put him in there by himself in the dark. Sun came up. Something happened to Sean that day. Call it whatever you want. Not here to talk religion. But through that morning in a hunting blind, Sean found out more about himself. He was able to break his addiction, became just a passionate hunter. Shortly after that, our paths crossed at a trade show, and then we did the show together for 7 years and still hunt together and still dear friends, even though we haven't done the TV. And so when you talk about 10% of the people fill in the tag, and again, you know, when we started, Taylor, with the original question, people think it's cruel. No. My best friend in the world is Ted Nugent, the rock star, older rock star. Some of you might not even know him. But Ted says the beauty of hunting is it provides food for your belly and food for your soul. And that's why year after year, when we fill a tag 10% of the time or 20% of the time, or I'll sit in the blind and freeze my ass off for 20 days in a row and see nothing. That's why I do it over and over. Because eventually I'm hoping that I'm going to feed my belly, but every single time I'm out, I'm feeding my soul.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to do one more hefty question, and we're going to move to Q&A. So if you guys have anything, we will get there shortly. You know, a long time ago, hunting was a guy in a flannel shirt with a rifle out in the woods. Today, we've got cellular trail cams, thermal optics, long-range rifles, e-bikes. The tools open to hunters are very advanced. At the same time, there's been this increase in a hunting culture that prioritizes, like we kind of talked about, you know, monster antlers, sponsorships, high-end gear, and taking animals in what we'll call like a very creative way. You see a lot of, you know, hog hunting from helicopters or baboon hunting with blow darts. So the combination of this really high-end technology with these kind of creative, we'll say, hunting methods, the general public, whether they're hunters or not, they see this. So this is a question for you both, but we'll start with Mark. You know, how do you think that the rapid rise in technology, coupled with some of the more, we say, flashy hunting styles, even though they're legal, how do you think that that reflects on the hunting community, and what would you like to see from that community going forward?
Well, I think like anything, you have to be a responsible hunter, and we have to ensure that we teach that. And that comes from a family of hunting or being around people who are one, first and foremost, of good character. Because there's always going to be that next new thing out there, you know. And I mean, for the first, well, I'd say for probably most of my life outside of the military, I hunted in blue jeans and a flannel shirt. And, you know, whether I'm crawling through the weeds in the snow in that or in the best camo that's out there, it doesn't take away from um, the hunt. And one with a lot of that equipment, again, like we talked about with the taxes, that is helping support that. And from the management side of things, the decisions on how many tags are sold each year is based on one is each and every sector or that you can hunt and what that land can carry and how many have been harvested before. So it's the science behind it that matters and allows us and allows DNR and to set those limits on what's going to be hunted and how many tags are going to be issued.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right, Mark, because if you're talking about managing based on science, habitat carrying capacity, if somebody wants to shoot their deer with a crossbow or a longbow, recurve, a compound, inline, it doesn't matter, okay? Iron scope, iron sights, scope, it's all part of the science behind it. You need to harvest X amount of deer to have a sustainable population. So whether it's high-end gear, God bless them for having it. If they can afford it, great, because it's more tax money. But I guess, Mark, I'd ask you, were you glad you had high-end night gear in Benghazi?
Yeah, just a little bit.
All right, thanks, guys. Before we move to Q&A, if somebody in this room wanted to start getting into hunting right now, what is the first thing that they should do?
Well, I'll go first, Mark, if you don't mind. So I was very fortunate. Everyone in my family, both my grandfathers, all my uncles, my dad, all hunters. So I grew up in this. I can't remember not being in the woods and I drew a lot of my self-worth out of that. Originally, and I'm older, it was a man sport. Okay. And that's the way it was. Donald Trump Jr. is one of my close friends, and Mark and Don and I and Ted Nugent actually started this organization together. Don, I did a TV show with Don and his dad one time down in Dallas. And Don said something that was really smart. We're now in a modern era where a lot of two-parent homes. A lot of kids are growing up with mama bear, not papa bear. And where hunting camps used to exclude the women, it was a mistake. And we should recognize that and have recognized that because mama bears, quite frankly, are as good a shot as the men. And there's no bones about that. My daughter can outshoot my boys. Sorry, guys, I know you're watching. Ann is all with thumbs up right now. It's awesome. But so the whole idea of getting into the sport of hunting is you don't have to come from a hunting family to do it. That used to be how it was, and the only way you got in. Your rite of passage was it was handed down to you. Don't let that be a barrier to you. You guys all have these smartphones and know how to use them, unlike me. And so you can go online and you can learn everything there is to know about it on paper. And then find somebody, find a mentor. Guys like me should do a better job of making sure. Mark and I talked about this. We're so excited to be here with this group. We are going to partner with ACC to put on a few hunts across the country. Bring some of you young people that have not had the opportunity to get out into the woods. Teach you very simple things, firearm and weapon safety. And then some of the things you learn today, like survival skills that are very important. Because I'm going to tell you, you want to feel really good about yourself? During COVID, when people were going to the grocery store and there was no meat on the shelf, I didn't worry about it. I knew damn well that if I had to go out and kill whatever I had to kill to feed my family, I could do it. There's some honor and pride in the fact that you can take care of yourself. And your generation is the Make America Healthy generation. You want to know where your food came from. You hate steroid-infused, hormone-infused, chemically sprayed, kind of like you'll take spots on the apple, but leave me the birds and the bees. That's your generation's legacy. Hunting should be a very, very big part of that. So find somebody in your world whose parent does it, hook up with them and get out, and hands-on conservation is what you're going to do.
Raise your hand right now if you want to take Keith up on that offer.
All right. Well, Mark is figuring out how, if some people want to come out in Colorado and prairie dog hunt with him, I will put together some very vanilla hunts on the East Coast, and then I'll do something in Kansas. But we will, I promise you, we'll work with you guys, and we'll get a whole bunch of y'all out there and introduce you to this sport, because if Roosevelt was right, if he was right about one thing, that hunters are the best and the most necessary conservationists in America, and we're seeing the hunting numbers decrease like this, if Roosevelt would materialize right here, he would say we have to fix that. And that's my generation's problem. And this excluding women was part of it. But now let's fix it. And you guys be the generation that brings hunting back. Just use a popular phrase in half of the country anyway, make hunting great again.
That's right. That's right. All right. We got a couple minutes for Q&A here. While we're doing that, can we all just appreciate how well behaved Romy is?
She did all
She's like, what?
All right. Any questions out here? Do we have a mic runner? Yeah. We'll go, we'll do Evan over here and then over here.
I'm sure you guys have loud enough voices. You don't need a microphone, do you?
Probably true.
There we go.
Thank you guys so much for this. This was wonderful. Are irresponsible hunters an issue? And if so, how do we keep them in check?
And what do you define irresponsible for me? Are you talking like poaching?
Well, in my mind, kind of just hunting, leaving the carcass just for the thrill of the kill and not really the culture that you guys are talking about.
So those aren't hunters. Those are criminals. Okay. It's like someone that jumps a fence to shoot a deer on private property or non-hunting federal land. They're not hunters. They're criminals. And we do a very good job. I mean, every game agency and all the regs, it's like, hey, tell on your bad acting friends. And we are the largest group of tattletales that you've ever seen, because we do, I mean, this is sacred to real hunters. If you can't tell of my passion, I mean, I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm an outfitter. I guide moose hunts and grizzly bear hunts and have for 30 years. I mean, I've done TV. But at my core, if when I get up at the pearly gates, I think the first words out of his mouth are going to be, hey, you lived a great hunting lifestyle. And so criminal hunters, poachers, trespassers, we police that ourselves.
Right here. Go ahead.
Hi. So I'm an active hunter. I wish I was better at it. But so I live in Texas, obviously a huge hunting state, and I often try to go out of my way to justify hunting to a lot of my city slicker friends. The way I've kind of seen is there's kind of three tiers on like how easy it is to explain. There's hog hunting, which, you know, those are menaces that need to die. Then you have your standard stuff, your whitetail, your dove, your ducks, and all that. But I find I kind of struggle when I try to explain exotic hunting, because these are species that are not from here originally, that we seem to be maintaining for the sole purpose of just hunting. I find that the conservation argument is a little harder to explain there. So I'm just kind of curious how you guys reconcile that to the less well-versed.
And it isn't the easiest thing. It is something, though, that is here. I mean, from a conservation standpoint, there's more lions and tigers in Texas than there are in Africa. Yeah. There is. I mean, there's more in captivity, and I wouldn't say captivity because Yes, it is high fence hunting, which is 40,000 acres of high fence area. But a lot of those animals are that have been brought over. And it is something that maybe it should have never happened, but it did. So now how do we deal with it? And I think that is one of the ways is from a conservation standpoint, from I mean, an education standpoint, something is something in Colorado, there's a wolf preserve. Why is the wolf preserve there? Uh, because they had too many wolves, or they had people that had taken them as pets and then let them go. So they were captured and put into places like that. So we have to also sometimes just deal with what we've got and do the best that we can from there and utilize it for that, for what it is, and help use that to support other conservation. Because as we know in Texas, I mean, there's more people that go to Texas to hunt safaris and then go to Africa. There's just, I don't know, I don't think there's an animal in Africa that you can't hunt other than maybe baboons. And I will say something just real quick on baboons, because I know a lot of people, it's been in the news media and stuff. I've been over there in some of those areas, and the baboons will come into people's houses and steal their babies and eat them. That happens. They are a menace. They are like hogs in Texas, just so you know.
And I will say this, I'm unapologetically a hunter, and I don't apologize for it. And I don't apologize if I don't do a lot of high fence hunting. I have, but I don't apologize for it. I wouldn't apologize for crossbows or inlines or anything. But, and then you say, well, what if you don't eat it? Well, if it's part of the whole process of conservation, take predators, for example. We shoot coyotes, but coyotes, they save turkeys. They save deer. We're in this issue about wolves right now.
They save cattle.
Yeah, save cattle, save all livestock, sheep, like the wolf debate right now that's raging across the country. Oh, we can't kill wolves. Well, who's to say that the wolf is more important than the elk or the deer? I mean, who in the room that thinks you're supreme enough to pick an animal and say, we're going to prioritize that animal above all others? And so I'm unapologetically a hunter. And I think as long as we're managing wildlife with science, hands-on, that's the answer. These people and the anti-hunting groups that are out there that don't believe in hands-on conservation, that want to pick winners and losers in the conservation, they call it the game. It's not a game to me. It's a lifestyle. That's the wrong side of the coin. And again, I promise you, if you've read, and I won't get into it, but if you've read, and I've read virtually every book Teddy Roosevelt ever wrote, if he stood here right now, he would oppose the non-management of wolves. Teddy Roosevelt would answer your question, don't apologize, enjoy the sport. He wrote long pages of how much he enjoyed the hands-on art of hunting and conservation. So my best advice to you young people is get involved in hands-on conservation. You will take more pride, have more satisfaction in being able to sit down at the supper table with your family and share the bounty of your hard work and your harvest. I promise you it'll change the way you see conservation forever.
All right, looks like we are out of time. Thankfully, we are about to take a break. So if you guys have questions for Keith or Mark, we're going to hang out here during the break. So feel free to come down, chat about hunting or whatever else. But thank you guys for being here, and we will see you in about half an hour, I believe. 15 minutes. All right, thanks, guys.